Hello, regular knife people. This is the regular guy and the regular guy's knife channel. Back for another good episode. If you can't tell by my voice, I'm a little under the weather here. So this video is being brought to you, but at death's door. It's about the sickest I've been in a long time, to include COVID, and I am actually COVID negative, so this is just a good old-fashioned flu and/or cold. All right, bringing it here tonight. We've got the Curtis F3 medium Spanto flipper. Right, and this was a knife that I'd actually purchased about going on, I guess, 2 months now. And to be completely honest, it had some issues, right out of the box. So what you do in that situation, kind of depends on you. This is the second time I've purchased a Curtis. The first one was about a year ago, and it immediately went back. It had some lockup issues. I just didn't feel like fooling with it. There were other knives available at the time that I wanted. So I was able to get that back and get it returned in enough time that I could actually pick up a knife that I wanted. I didn't miss out. This time a little different. I really wanted this Curtis. I really wanted to bring you guys one, disassemble it, and take a closer look at the spot, the pivot system he uses, and what makes that unique. And all you ever hear about Mr. Dave Curtis is how good, his customer service is. And so I wanted to give it a try. The little birdie that was putting out there that all knife rebuilds were being returned in Magnacut, that may have had a little bit to do with it. As this knife was originally purchased, it was an XHP, which absolutely amazing steel, nothing wrong with it, but rolling that dice for the opportunity to get one in Magnacut, I thought was worth it. So I did send it back to Mr. Curtis, wrote him out a brief little note of the issues I had. Mainly it was the lockup was extremely deep. I mean, it was like 80 to 90%, deep the lockup was, as well as there was a lot of detent lash. And the detent was like, man, you had to almost use two thumbs to get it to flip. So it had some issues. I'll send it back about a week after receiving it. Mr. Curtis sent me an email, said, hey, we're going to just build you a new knife. And then that was the last communications I got from him until roughly about a week after that, when he sent me shipping info, because they mailed it out to me. So I did get it back. It does appear to be a completely brand new knife. I know the original knife that I sent him, I'm almost nearly positive, had stainless steel pivot hardware. This one came back in titanium, as well as so hopefully we can pick that up here. Came back to me. I don't know if it's there you go. We can see that there. Came back to me in Magnacut. All right, so yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, it did take a little bit longer for me to get my knife, and you say what you want about that knife should have been perfect right out of the box. It is what it is. I kind of take it like, every single one of his knives are individually built by him, one dude. I haven't the slightest clue what his what his QC process is, but things slip through, things happen, right? He did rectify it, he made it better, and he got me a new knife out, and I feel in an upgrade, with the Magnacut. I don't own any Magnacut knives other than this one now, and I've been really, being a big fan of Mr. Laren Thomas and the things that he has done for the knife community, and he's done for us knife nerds here. I wanted to get a knife in this steel, and we'll go over Magnacut here towards the end, just in case, for those who are unfamiliar with the history of it. But we'll take a closer look at the knife first, and then we'll save the boring knife steel talk for the end here. So again, this is the F3 medium Spanto flipper. Back to me in Magnacut. man, I should have. Let me get my caliper here. Let's see how thick the blade is on this guy, because it is. This thing is a beast. So we are looking at about 164 at the spine. That is a thick ass knife, or thick ass blade for a knife of this size. You know, we're looking at roughly about 3.3 inches in blade length, 4.4 inches close length, and a 7.7, right? Because we can math. Overall length coming in at a very, very hefty 4.72 ounces. And once we get this apart, I've had this guy apart, obviously. I put some skiffs in it and just wanting to check it out. But you'll see it's not, that weight's not due to some big giant slab scales. You know, there's steps have been taken. Most of that weight's carried in the blade. It does, to me, in my hands, it does give me a little kind of an odd balance to it if you're not a choil guy. I mean, instantly, if your finger wants to go to the choil, and it does have a nice big generous choil put in there, so you know, so for you choil guys, this knife would be fantastic. But if you're a all four on the scales type guy, it does have kind of an odd balance to it. It definitely is a weight forward balance. You know, a lot of your hinderers out there, you know, even though they have a nice generous finger choil, you know, with all four fingers on the scales, right there over your index finger, those knives generally are neutrally balanced. Right there over the index finger is your balance point. And so if you choke back, then your blade heavy. If you pull up, then your scale heavy. You know, your handle heavy. And so you got some options. This knife, not so much, man. It's on the choil, or it's a chopper, right? Or it feels like it wants to be a chopper. It just has a different balance to it and a different set of ergos. I'm kind of on the fence with them at the moment. And maybe after some use I'll come to appreciate them more, but as far as the grip goes, and as far as how I get a hold of those scales, you know, not a fan, not the biggest fan. But again, this horse is for courses. You know, my medium largest hands, I think the Army told me I was a 7.5 glove size. You know, you know, I want to keep my index finger in that finger cut out, but then it puts my index, you know, it puts my middle finger here at kind of a weird spot. So I don't know, you know, maybe this was just meant to be a choil user or not, but yeah, kind of the grip and the balance of it kind of a little bit odd. All right, so we're taking a look at that. Obviously, it's all titanium construction on the outside. I've tested them. So the pivot hardware and the screws are all titanium. It is a T6 body screw, and then his kind of odd pivot system. Now you can get this thing apart with either you know, a big flat head. You can use a big Phillips head. You can use a dime. You know, you're not stuck buying a special tool to disassemble his knives. Although I did, you know, because you know, I'm a tool whore, and what can I say? You know, any excuse to buy another driver. Driver's pretty nice for 50 bucks. I don't know, you know, but it works. It does come with a T6 bit, with a WIA T6 bit, and then it's similar to the zero tolerance. What was that knife? Was that the RJ? I've got the tool here. But Kershaw has a similar zero tolerance and a Kershaw knife that uses a kind of a similar pivot type system, or at least not a similar pivot system, but you know, tool, I should say. So yeah, it does have a special tool. Now this pivot is supposed to never need adjusting. It's supposed to, you know, lock into place right where you want it, and then it's supposed to stay there without ever needing to be adjusted. Now, as the knife breaks in, it is going to loosen up, and you are going to want to retension the pivot just slightly, but yeah. We'll go into the anti-rotation feature and how they accomplish that, because I guess that's really the what really makes this style of pivot special. It does have that style where it's got the big washer on the pivot that also acts as the over travel stop. We've seen that before. There's the zero tolerance, the Syncobit, the little guy, the flipper. It uses a similar setup. The stovepipe, the Kingdom Armory stovepipe Spyderco knife there, that uses a very similar style setup. And there's a few of them out there, so it's not 100% unique to Curtis. It's how he turns that. It's how he integrates the anti-rotation feature of the pivot, which makes this knife kind of unique. So we'll go ahead and, without further ado, get into it here a little bit. So just put the nubbins in the holes. Get that pivot off. So nice, big, large pivot. And it is titanium. Now you can kind of see down in there the blade stop right here. And once I get this thing apart here, you'll see how that all just kind of relates together here. All right. I don't know why I'm using the magnets. None of these are magnetic, but hardware's okay. It's not the best hardware I've seen. It's not the worst hardware I've seen. A little loose. Probably mass sourced, you know. Believe it or not, one of the hardest things for an independent knife guy or an independent knife maker to do is to manufacture the small screws. That's one of the tougher things to do. It's getting those Torx heads, those Torx holes or heads, you know, correct. The tooling and machining that's required to make those little screws is actually pretty complex. And so it's fairly common for a lot of knife companies to source their hardware as opposed to manufacturing it in-house. All right, so there you go. Get the blade off. Now, like I said, these guys got skiff bearings in them. Pretty much any knife I've got that'll fit a skiff bearing, it's got a skiff bearing in it. I'm a big believer of them. And most knives that I've put them in, it has improved their action quite a bit. So I generally do. You'll see a little bit of black stuff here, and that is a special kind of grease. It's a Aeroshell grease. It's a 33 MS Aeroshell, and what that is, it's an extremely high pressure, high temperature bearing grease for turbine engines, from what I understand. Now, I mean, that's what I've read. Traditionally, what I've used it for in the past is that is the actual anti-seize grease that is spec'd for the barrel nut on an M16 or an AR-15. So, you know, building AR-15s and wanting to keep them, you know, to as spec as possible, then that's what you use for the. That's what you use to grease up the barrel nut. So, what I use it for, because it is infused with molybdenum disulfide, is I use it for knives with a bit of lock stick. And out of the package, because this does not use a lock face insert, I did get, for the first 100 or so flips, not a bit of lock stick, smooth as silk. And then all of a sudden, the lock stick came on, man. Hard lock. Some of the worst lock stick I've ever had on a knife. And then about 100 more, you know, flips, openings and closings, you know, the lock stick started to taper off and it started to smoothen out. And now we're back, hopefully, on that smoothing out kind of track there. So, I guess the big thing behind the spot here, the pivot, is the fact that it uses the blade stop pin to prevent the pivot from rotating, right? So you can see there's a hole that goes straight through. It goes straight through, and then on the pivot side, there's a pocket. And your blade stop pin goes through the hole and into that pocket, and then it locks that pivot into place. So, you know, D-shaped hole not necessary. This just uses the blade stop pin as an anti-rotation feature, which is pretty innovative, pretty ingenious to incorporate that. You know, It is different. Not sure if there's any other knives out there doing something similar to it, but from my end, I've not seen it before. So we've got the detent ball set there. It is, let's see if you guys can tell there. All right, it has been carbidized, and it is just a bare lock face that's been carbidized. And you can see where it's starting to wear in just a little bit there, but you know, I think I've stated it before, I just don't have enough experience one way or the other, you know, to really, you know, given my druthers, I prefer a lock face insert. I don't understand why companies don't use them. It seems like that would streamline, if nothing else, it would streamline the manufacturing process. So for instance, this knife that had some lock issues that I returned, they essentially had to build me a whole brand new knife. Where if that was, say, a hinderer with similar issues, they could have resolved the whole thing with a small little, you know, new lock face insert and completely repaired the issues. But you know, that's what works out for Mr. Curtis, and you know, I'm sure he's a bit more smarter about this stuff than I am, so it is what it is. Blade stop track on these guys is internal on the blade, so no exposed blade stop. Everything's internal. You guys are really well oiled. I try to put a lot of oil in these for their initial break-in. Just, if nothing else, it helps. You know, when you're breaking it in, you're smoothing that metal out. You're burnishing it and polishing it, especially on the bearing tracks there. You're gonna create some metal particles, and I try to flood the pivot out with oil just to help flow those metal particles away from the pivot area. Maybe give some little extra life to those bearings. Maybe, I don't know. All right, and there we can see too on the insides of the scales. All right, remember I was saying all that weight's in the blade. These things have been pocketed. They're lightened. They've got lightning cuts in them, both scales, down to even the lock bar has been milled out just a little bit. They're not deep. They're not. It's not super aggressive milling, and they're not super deep. And you know, maybe I doubt it's even a quarter of an ounce of weight that's saved. But it is nice to see that. You know, that's really not the norm for USA made knives as of late. You know, most U.S. knife companies, you know, they don't do any kind of lightening on the inside of their titanium scales. You just get a slab of titanium, you know. A lot more common on your Asian made knives, Chinese made knives, you know, where labor is cheaper, I guess. But so yeah, I didn't check to see what angle. Let me get my little tool here. We'll check and see what the angle of this blade is here. My little laser interferometer here. Let's see if we can get an idea of what the sharpening angle of this guy was. I'm gonna say it's 20. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to say it's probably around 22 degrees, 23 degrees. So it's a pretty thick blade. Yeah, about 22 and a half. I know he sharpens all his knives by hand on a belt grinder, so generally not the most consistent of angles in the world, but yeah, 22. I mean, for a blade this thick, 22's adequate. You know, I would assume the tasks that you're putting this knife to are going to, or would require, you know, a much more heavy duty edge than, say, like that Kapara that we showed off in the last video. You know, that thick, you know, you can expect to be doing some really heavy duty cutting tasks, and that 22 degree edge is just fine for that. The grind on it's really pretty. I like how the transition from the flat grind at the tip to the hollow grind here in the main belly of the blade, a lot of times that transition line meets up with the very point of the tanto, and aesthetically I like that, but sharpening it becomes a pain in the ass. As you sharpen, you know, Spanto style knives, that point there kind of wants to move on you a little bit, and it wants to transition more down towards the belly a little bit, which will knock the alignment out anyways. So you know, you just, you just got the real deep flat or deep hollow grind there with the little bit of a flat portion. I'm sure it lightens the blade up just a little bit. You got these kind of triangular fullers. It's got F3 on one side, Curtis on the other, and they've been deeply acid washed. There's a good deep etch on those. So just a little bit of a detent ramp, which is, you'd expect it on blade stock this thick. You need to assist that detent as much as you can to get up and over, especially when it's got that much space to clear, So yeah, and then you got your little backspacer here, a little titanium backspacer. It's got some really deep chimping cuts in it, as well as the blade does. They're sharp. I'm not gonna lie, they're pretty damn aggressive. The backspacer not as bad because it is inset into the handles a little bit, so it doesn't feel as aggressive in the hand. But the blade chimping is definitely on the aggressive side. So yeah, that's it. Just in case you're ever wanting to see on the inside of an F3 and take a closer look there at the spot. It is a very well done system. With the big giant pivot and pivot screw. I would think that these were steel. The pivot itself was steel, but it might be titanium. Let's see here. Well, it's definitely non-magnetic, and I would assume then that it means it's titanium. I'm not sure how I feel about a titanium pivot. Your mileage may vary, but I haven't had super good luck with them. But those it's generally been from aftermarket, hardware kits for like Para 2s and stuff like that I've used that's had titanium pivots, and those are usually the cheapy ones you get on Amazon and Etsy. So the actual quality grade of that titanium is probably suspect. So hopefully he uses a bit higher grade of titanium here on these pivots, and or at least a harder grade of titanium, I should say. And so hopefully that pivot will last. It's got a lot of surface area on it and on the blade, so I don't see it being too much of an issue. And I've played with this knife a lot, so there's not much in the way of scoring on it. So I don't foresee that being an issue. All right, and then we'll go back to we'll do some reassembly on her here. So a little bit tricky at first couple of times. You got to get that pivot lined up so that you got that hole, that pocket there lined up with the hole, so you can drop the blade stop pin in. It does have a chamfered end to it to make it just a little bit easier to get that to seat in there. And then you kind of got to hold the knife together while you assemble it. So we'll get some oil here. Getting my Liberty Orals. Liberty oil, 100% synthetic turbine bearing oil here. All right, no race washers. Bearings just riding on the titanium. But that's, lots of guys do that. A little bit here in the detent. There we go. Not necessarily with this, the way the spot works on this thing, it is not the easiest knife to get together, especially if you're right-handed and that pocket clip's going to be on the right hand. This might be similar to like XM18s. I usually take the pocket clip off when I reassemble them. It usually just makes life a little bit easier. Probably have to do something similar for this knife in the future. pivot screw in, hold her together while we get the body screws together. We won't work it down tight yet. We'll get these body screws in first. The fit and finish on this knife are pretty good. You know, they're very, very well done. You know, as you know, which you'd kind of expect for the price, but then again, not always a given. You know, I've had a few way overhyped knives that were not as, you know, you weren't seeing $650 worth of value when you got that knife apart. So I'm gonna loosen it up a little bit. All right, that's about it. Put a little tiny bit of air shell there. Usually, so that moly, the thing is with the moly lube, under a high pressure situation or, you know, in high pressure applications, what it'll do is it'll embed itself into the surface of the steel and have a, you know, and provide a constant lubrosity to it there. And that's really why I use, mostly because I use it. Plus, I paid like $30 for this tiny little tub to use it like 3 times on an AR build. So I'm going to get my money's worth out of it here. Okay. But it does seem to help, especially on knives where you're experiencing some lock stick. It does definitely smooth it out. You know, and it'll help smooth it out until it smooths itself out on its own. All right, and that's about it. You know, that's it's a very simple, straightforward knife. A lot of good engineering went into it. It's been popular. It's been out there for quite a few years. That spot is definitely unique to Curtis. You know, I do like how you minimized parts by integrating parts, which is always nice for an EDC knife. You know, the less shit you got to worry about losing, the better. Comes with his unique pocket clip, kind of in the Hinderer style there, with his own little cutout. It is a bent metal clip, you know. It is what it is. I like them. They work, you know. A lot of people bitch about them. I don't care. You know, they work. It is what it is, you know. I mean, how much more would it have cost to engineer, you know, a milled pocket clip or a deep carry clip or something like that? I don't know. All right, but you know, it rides fairly deep, rides to about that point, and then you got that nice jimping. So when you're pinching it out of your pocket there, it's easy to get a hold of and get out. Which I appreciate more so than the ability to carry it all the way down in my pocket. You know, that's my biggest problem with a lot of them deep carry clips, is it makes getting it out of the pocket that much more difficult. So yeah, so I don't view that as a negative. Comes in a black box with the yellow Curtis logo there. You get, those are the original bearings. This thing, if you do have one, you want to order bearings. This one used the 1/4 inch pivot by 1/16 ball 13 count for the skip bearing. Then you get the little zipper case. You get the authenticity card. You'll see on mine, he sent me a brand new one with the knife. So this one was technically born on the 28th of November, and it's in Magnacut. And then you get some stickers and a patch. So yeah, about the bare minimum that's required now, it seems, nowadays for a higher end knife, you know, with the packing. But again, you know, like I said, this knife was kind of an experience. You know, it wasn't ready to go right out of the box. I had a lot of issues when I first received it. And you know, seeing as what the knife cost me, you know, and the couple of knives that I liked that I had to sell to get it, you know, I could have lost my shit, and shot it back to DLT and got my money back and continued on from then. But I don't have a Curtis, and I've been wanting one in my collection for a while. And like I said, the rumor is that all repaired Curtises were coming back with Magnacut. I saw that as my my opportunity to get a knife in Magnacut. I've been really jonesing after one. I know there's the McNees out there, the autos. I'm not a real big auto guy, and the 3.5s, the flippers have been kind of hard to come by, and so I just thought I'd bide my time, and the opportunity arose, and so now I got me an F3 and Magnacut. And for those who aren't aware of the history of Magnacut, it is one of the first, not one of the first, but it's the only designed for knives steel that has come out in quite a few years. Most knife steels that we see nowadays on knives were they're repurposed. They're originally invented for other uses, and it just so happens that their properties make them also work, as a knife steel. Dr. Laren Thomas is he's what the heck is he? He is a sheet metal engineer, I want to say. He does, I think he designs sheet metal for the auto industry, right? But his passion, the thing that he's passionate about, is knife steels. If you've ever been online and you've ever Google search, say Google M390, right? You are probably going to get an article from a website called Knife Steel Nerds, and that's Dr. Thomas's his website, right? And it doesn't take much, reading before you. He is the knife steel nerd, El Supremo. He lives and eats and breathes this stuff. And he came up with a formulation of what he thought was going to be the perfect knife steel, and he somehow talked a major U.S. manufacturer into cranking out a run for him, and the rest is history. And it's probably by far one of the most popular knife steels in recent years. For one of the main facts is it is a legit knife steel. I mean, it's a steel designed specifically for cutlery and the things that we do, sharpening and corrosion and everything else. That's specifically designed for knives. And so yeah, I picked up Dr. Thomas's book a little while back, and boy, it's some heady reading, because it's literally about steel, heat treating, and geometry. In a book that thick, right? so you're gonna learn a lot. It's just it can be some dry reading at times, but my God, man, for a man to have that much passion about something like this, and then to give back, you'd think that Mr. Thomas did this so he could become a billionaire. There's no billionaires in knife making, but he did this for the community, man. He did this for us. He did this just because he could, and because of that, we got our own steel, right? We got Magnacut. The name Magnacut harkens back to I believe it's kind of a takeoff of the old Carpenter steels. His article on Magnacut's 147 pages long. Okay. I made it about two-thirds of the way in, and I'm pretty positive he mentioned in there, and I could be wrong, but that the name Magnacut harkens back to Carpenter steels, back when we had like Carpenter knife and Carpenter die and those styles of steels, where they kind of named them after their purposes, and Magnacut is kind of supposed to invoke that, But so far, being this is the only knife I got it on, I'm gonna have to put it through its paces. I'm really itching to sharpen it. I'm curious to see how that goes. You can have the superest of all super steels, and if it's a pain in the butt to sharpen, you're never gonna use it, right? That knife's gonna get dull, and then it's gonna go back into your knife hoard, and until you can finally get around to sharpening it, and then it's just a chore. There are, like I've stated in the past, there are knife steels out there that are fantastically performing steels. I just hate to sharpen them. M390 is one of those steels. 20 CV M390. Those steels right there are probably my least favorite steels to sharpen. S30B, S35, 3B, those steels I absolutely love. Crewwear, I think Crewwear and 3B are pretty much the same, but those steels I absolutely love sharpening. They take such a wicked sharp edge, and you can get them to such a fine cutting edge, you know, that it's very rewarding to sharpen those knives. M390, I've always struggled. They have a very, I guess, malleable burr, I suppose. It doesn't want to break off, and I fight the burr on M390 every single time I sharpen it. So not one of my more favorite steels. It's looking at the composition of the Magnacut that this should be of a similar steel to 3B to sharpen. So we'll see. Hoping that's the case. I'll get back to you guys when I do finally put an edge on it. I am probably going to take the edge down just a little bit finer. It is hollow ground, but I think I can take it down. I think I can take it down to 20 degrees, no problem. Which is probably what I'll do. You know, we'll see. But yeah, so that is the Curtis. That's the long-awaited for knife. You know, it took about a month and a half, 2 months to get here. I would have liked to have shown you this video much sooner, but excuse me, much sooner. But yeah, so it is what it is, you know. But I can say I'm glad that I stuck with it. I'm glad that I gave Mr. Curtis the chance to make it right, and he did. He absolutely 100% did. I can't complain there. You know, would it have been nice if the knife came out of the box perfect on the first go? Sure. You know, and judging by all the Curtis fans out there, that generally seems to be the case. I just think I've been unlucky in Curtis knives, right? It happens. Shit happens, right? Can't really hold that against them too much. You know, and you know, granted, it's not how nice your product is. It's how they take care of you when the product isn't, right? And Curtis definitely did that, and he definitely went above and beyond. And now I have an F3 medium in Magnacut, which I am extremely happy about. Not that XHP is a bad steel. There's obviously not. It's a fantastic steel, but it's not Magnacut. You know, it's not Dr. Thomas's, you know, child. It's not his great contribution to the knife world, and for that, if nothing else, I wanted to make sure I've had at least one knife in Magnacut, and I'm sure it won't be the last. So that about wraps it up. Pretty simple knife, pretty simple video. I know it's been a little bit, you know, in between videos. These take some work, and work can take some work, and we're getting close to Christmas, and so I've got to work every available hour and do every available job I've got, so I can get that Christmas money in the bank and sell through the holidays. Hopefully we'll start doing some more videos, you know, more regularly here after the new year when I get a bit more time on my hands. But I'm not sure if it's going to be a series of videos or a big video, but I've got a big build coming up, and I'm sure if you guys saw my little poll that I posted up, you'll have an idea what that build's going to be. But it's going to be a full boat build. We'll have an example of every aftermarket part available for that knife. We'll put it together. We're going to do a two-tone acid wash on it. We're definitely going to be we're going to be anodizing all the titanium hardware to match. So you guys will finally get to see a little how-to video of how I do my titanium anodizing. And then, if we're feeling really froggy, I've been playing around with electro etching lately, trying to get that down a bit. You know, hopefully, if I'm feeling brave enough, we'll do a little bit of electro etching on it. But yeah, look for that to come. I'm not 100% sure if that's going to be a video or maybe two videos, depending on the length of it. I won't go in depth on acid washing because I already have a video on that, and so really the big tutorial part of that would be the titanium anodizing, and that's really not that bad. And there's a billion videos out there on how to anodize titanium. So maybe I'll just cover the little shortcuts that I've worked into my process, you know, over time. All right, well, I really appreciate you guys coming along with me tonight, and I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your weekend. This is the Regular Guy and this Regular Guy Knife Show, and we're signing off.